Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is John Livesay, aka the Pitch Whisperer, is an incredible keynote speaker. His TEDx talk, Be the Lifeguard of Your Own Life, has over 1 million views and was featured in Larry King's show. He has an innate ability to motivate company sales teams to turn mundane case studies into compelling case stories so they win more new business. From John's award-winning career at Conde Nast, he shares the lessons he learned. Best-selling author and creator of the online course Revenue Rockstar Mastery, he hosts his own podcast, The Successful Pitch, heard in over 60 countries. John has a new book, The Sale is in the Tail, is a business fable set in Austin, Texas, and is about a sales representative whose old ways of selling are not working anymore. So without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones, and let's jump right into this conversation with John. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, John, could you share with us in your own words a little bit about your journey, how it is that you got to where you are today?
Sure. I feel that I've always been motivated by connecting with people emotionally, and that's where storytelling really comes in. I had a background working for an ad agency, creating commercials for movies when they were coming out on home video, and that's really where I learned my storytelling skills. And then selling multi-million-dollar mainframe computers against IBM, I learned that whoever told the best story is the one that got the sale, and that people buy emotionally and not logically.
That is so true. It's funny you said people buy emotionally and not logically, because I've been preaching that in customer service for ages, that, the customer's emotions are so important to the experience because it's what they walk away feeling, what they remember most, not necessarily, what you said, but more so, the feeling that they walked away with. So can you share with our listeners? I mean, I'm sure you have way more experience than I do, and you probably even have statistical data to back up this particular principle. Share a little bit about that in terms of why is it that the emotional has such a greater impact on the buying journey?
Well, we're wired for storytellings. If you think back to the days of when we all lived in caves, we told stories, by fire. And now we typically tell stories around PowerPoints at events. I think part of the reason is that it taps into a different part of our brain. If you start presenting a bunch of facts and figures to somebody, then they're in this analytical, sometimes decision paralysis mode. But if you tell a story, it taps into a different part of our brain where people relax a little bit. They think, oh, this might even be entertaining. And it allows them to retain the information in a completely different way. And that solves a big problem because most people, after they have a sales presentation or even a customer service experience, whatever they've said is forgettable. But if you told a story that makes people feel seen and heard, that makes you memorable.
Good point. So sales and customer service go hand in hand. And I think more and more as businesses evolve and they recognize that they're not two separate activities in a business and they really need to be combined in the best way possible. What are 3, I would say, techniques that you teach or that you promote, believe in, that will help sales representatives or sales professionals to be more customer oriented and be able to really drive the sale home?
Well, the premise is that whoever tells the best sale is the one that's going to get the sale. So honing your storytelling skills, the 3 things I teach people are that a good story should be clear, concise, and compelling. So let's break those down. Why does it need to be clear? Because if you confuse people with a bunch of acronyms, they're not going to tell you they're confused. They're just going to say no. The confused mind just, I don't think so. Too much work. Why does it need to be concise? Well, you want them to be able to remember and retell your story to other people to become your brand ambassadors. And if your story goes on and doesn't have a point to it and isn't concise, nobody can remember, let alone repeat it. And finally, why does it need to be compelling? Because when you tug at those heartstrings, you get that all-important emotional connection that we talked about. People have to feel something in those stories. The stories have to have, the stakes have to be high in order for us to care about what's going on in the story.
So John, can you tell us what's the best sales story you've heard that had all those three components?
Haha. Well, I will tell you a story about a client I worked with. They had a piece of equipment that was making surgeries go 30% faster. And they would present that fact to doctors and they would sell some, but not very many. And they kept saying, why aren't it's so logical? Why aren't they buying? And I said, because people buy emotionally, not logically, even when they're a doctor. And so I asked some questions and we crafted this story that has totally changed how people perceive them and buy the product. Imagine how happy Dr. Higgins was down at Long Beach Memorial using our equipment when he could go out to the patient's family an hour earlier than expected. And if you've ever waited for somebody you love to come out of surgery, you know every minute feels like an hour. The doctor comes out and says, good news, the scope shows they don't have cancer, they're going to be fine. And then turns to the rep and says, this is why I became a doctor, for moments like this. Now that rep tells us this story to another doctor at another hospital, and the secret here is the other doctor sees himself in the story and says, you know what, that's why I became a doctor. I want your equipment too.
All right. Very good. I like examples because they definitely tie into, the real part of the show. All right. So thank you for sharing, John. Now, as a revenue rockstar master, because you have this online course, Revenue Rockstar Mastery. What are some things that you teach in this course to help people to master their revenue?
Well, one of the things I teach is what I just did there, which is a case story instead of a case study, and teach people how to tell a story that other people see themselves in. When the client heard that story, they said, oh gosh, that gives us chills. Not only are we not telling a story like that, it never occurred to us to make a patient's family a character in the story. And so I teach you how to figure out how to tell that story and how to pull people in. You see how I use that technique if you've ever had to wait for somebody you love. And even if you haven't, you could imagine what it would feel like to wait for somebody you love to come out of surgery, that it would feel like every minute was an hour.
Right.
And so there's some techniques that I teach people so they go from just being a good storyteller to a great one.
And what if you have a sales professional who, the storytelling is weak? Like they've never communicated like that before. This is definitely like a learning curve for them that is extremely steep. It's not like they've had maybe a few techniques down pat, but they just need to kind of, craft it a little bit better. But they, it's all new to them, and they're shy. They don't like talking to people very much. How do you lift them? How do you lift them out of that?
Sounds like there's two challenges there. One, being shy, not talking to people, is completely separate from maybe sales is not the career for you. But second, I give people a structure on how to tell a story, because the good news is you don't have to be a gifted athlete or singer to become a good storyteller. There's an actual structure to it. There's the exposition where you paint a picture and pull us into the story, and then you describe a problem. As I mentioned, there has to be some emotional hook there that people care about what's going on, and then the solution, and then the secret sauce is, what is the resolution? What is life like for somebody after they've bought something from you or hired you?
Because at the end of the day, every business is solving a problem. So I guess if you can change the perspective of the story, where the benefit is to the person that you're trying to sell to, and as you mentioned, create an image or a story that they're able to see this problem being solved in the easiest way possible, then they're more inclined to want to make the purchase.
Correct. And you don't have to be pushy. When you tell a great story that somebody sees themselves in, then they just want to go on the journey with you. You've pulled them into the story, and you've pulled them into wanting to work with you. It's like landing a plane. It's that normal and expected.
All right. So, John, you have a new book out. It's called The Sale is in the Tail. Can you tell our audience a little bit about that book?
Sure. It's set here in Austin, where I live, so it's a little bit of a love letter to Austin. And it's a story about storytelling. So you're being entertained and going on a journey of somebody whose old ways of selling, of just pushing out facts and figures, isn't working anymore. And they start to learn about the power of storytelling, and it helps them not only in their career, but in their personal life too.
All right. And where can our listeners access that book? Is it available as yet?
Yes, it's anywhere you buy books. Audible, I'm narrating it, or Amazon, wherever you want to buy a book, you can find it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So, could you also share with our listeners, John, what is the one tool, website, or app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
Calendar, scheduling. It's between the time zones and yeah, so I just can't imagine going back and forth with 5 different emails or phone calls trying to book people that way or get myself booked that way. Those calendar links are everything.
Okay. All right. Which is there a particular calendar application that you use, or just the regular one on your phone?
No, I use something called Schedule Once Hub.
Okay. So we'll have the link to that scheduling app as one of the tools that John uses in his business for our listeners that would like to tap into that awesome resource. Now, John, could you also share with us maybe one or two books that you've read recently, or even a book that you've read a very long time ago, but it has had a big impact on you?
Well, a book I read a long time ago is Tim Sanders' The Likability Factor. And he's done all this research on how the more likable you are, the more empathy you connect with people. And doctors spend more time with patients they like, teachers spend more time with students they like. And so it's a great book on how to up your likability factor. And then he also wrote another one more recently called Deal Storming. Instead of brainstorming, it's about deal storming and how important it is to collaborate across divisions to get everybody on board to win business.
All right. Now, sales is one of those, it's one of those things in an organization that is the lifeline of the organization, right? If the company doesn't sell anything, it can't make any money. And if it can't make any money, it cannot pay staff, it cannot, reinvest, it just cannot continue. So could you share with us, we're just emerging out of a pandemic. I know a lot of organizations definitely had to diversify and pivot and, take on technology a lot more, especially if they didn't have it integrated into their business. Now there's, a lot more AI opportunities like platforms such as ChatGPT and OpenAI. Are these tools that you believe for organizations, regardless of the industry, that these AI opportunities that are existing can help to propel sales in the business? Do you think it will probably even replace at some point the human interaction and storytelling?
I don't think AI will ever replace the need for soft skills of storytelling, empathy, and listening, because what they can do is maybe help you write a proposal or a cover letter a little faster than starting from scratch if you're someone that doesn't have that skill set innately honed in or worked on. But people are still going to want to buy from people is my prediction.
Okay. And what are also, let's say, 3 skills that a sales professional needs outside of the storytelling, the 3 C's that you had mentioned? What are 3 skills that you believe a sales professional needs in order to be successful? Because I believe people buy from people who they like and people who they know. And so how do you get people to like you?
Well, instead of getting people to know, like, and trust you, which that concept has been around forever. The problem with, let me get you to know me, people think they should send more data and more facts. Let me send you one more email about some data point. So I've reversed that and I say it's a gut, heart, head order. You have to start with trust in the gut. Is this safe? Is it a fight or flight? Is this email safe? The introduction I got, trust gets transferred. Am I making eye contact? So you start with trust, and then it moves up to the heart, which we talked about is where the likability factor is. And the more empathy you show, the more likable you are. And then finally, it goes to the head. And it's still not the time to get into the intellectual left brain stuff, but you're answering by telling a story, the unspoken question everybody has when they hear you present or pitch anything, including yourself. Will this work for me? They might trust and even like you, but if they don't think what you're offering is going to work for them, they're not going to buy.
Agreed. That makes sense for sure. So you said that they need to like you, and there's the heart component in terms of the empathy. And I've been asked the question quite a few times in some of my customer service training sessions, how do you teach someone to exercise empathy? Is that something that you touch on in your interactions with sales professionals?
Yes. Well, an example is, what's the difference between empathy and sympathy? Let's start there. Sympathy is, let's say you are a sales rep and you're walking in and you have an appointment and you see the receptionist has, FedEx and UPS and the 3 phone lines ringing and 2 other people ahead of you. you could say, gosh, I'm sorry to bother you, but I have an appointment. That's a little bit of sympathy, maybe. But empathy is you literally put yourself in their shoes. You go, wow, you must feel like an air traffic controller today. Whenever you have a minute, let me know.
So we focus on ensuring that we have more of those types of experiences then.
Yes.
All right. Now, can you share with us as well, what's the one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? Either something you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
Well, one of the things I'm really excited about is I've crafted a new keynote talk called Tell Stories, Recruit Top Talent. And the Society of Human Resources has had me come speak, as well as Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. A lot of people are still struggling to find really good talent. And they may be good at selling a home or selling whatever they do, but they're not good at telling a story to recruit people to come work there. And so once they learn how to tell a story about what the culture is and what it's like to work with them as a leader and what stories of other people who've come on board and how happy they are, then that totally allows them to get the top talent, typically from competitors, to come work there.
Okay. Is this like in an application or is it more through a website?
No, neither. It's something that people hire me to come speak at their sales meetings.
Oh, so you're going in physically.
Yep.
Have you found a way?
That's what I do for a living, is people hire me to come speak at their sales kickoff meetings, typically on how to tell stories to win sales. And now they realize that HR is a sales function as well.
Yeah, very true. Because you want to recruit the right pure persons. And I find with customer service as well, John, that if you can focus on getting the right people, it will mitigate a lot of the customer service issues that you have, in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found that for sales as well? If you get the right person to sell, because then, hiring
sure.
and the hiring process is quite expensive. It's time consuming.
Yes. Right. You want to develop relationships with people that you sell so that they either buy from you again and or send you referrals. And so if you have a salesperson that knows how to do that, then they're not starting from scratch every day to try and find a new sale.
All right. So we're almost halfway through 2023. Do you have maybe one or two tips that you would give to our listeners as it relates to sales and customer service? Just, some golden nuggets based on your experience and all of the different things that you've garnered over the years.
Well, one of the things that salespeople struggle with is they get stuck in what I call the friend zone at work. Where someone says, oh, I'm interested, send me some information, and then they get ghosted, just like when you're in the dating world. And so I think one of the key things to do is to realize that it's up to you to tell a story to intrigue people enough to want to continue the conversation and not get stuck at the friend zone at work. And so that's why storytelling is so crucial to continuing that path, and also really allowing people to go at the pace that works best for them. One of I think the worst things I've ever seen somebody in customer service do is, well, we've never had anybody else complain about this. When you say that to somebody, you've invalidated their experience and their feelings. They don't really care. So what? I'm the first person to ever have a problem with this. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't fix it.
Agreed.
And a lot of customer service people, like to say that to people. Oh, wow, this has never happened before. I don't care. If I'm a customer, I don't care. It's never happened before. It happened to me. Fix it.
Agreed. That kind of dovetails into my next question. So let's say, for example, I know that your expertise is to go in and pitch to these organizations how to tell a story, especially to sell. But let's say, for example, you had to go into an organization to teach them. Well, you wouldn't be really teaching them to pitch, but let's say you're trying to get them to convince them to purchase a program that will help to improve on their service. Because I find a lot of times with organizations, buying the product is one, but if the product requires a high level of maintenance from the organization, that's where it falls off. I hear it a lot in Jamaica. You buy a car, the sales rep was running you down to buy the car, and then you have the vehicle and you're having issues with it. Maybe something came on the dashboard. You can't get the sales rep. You can't get support at the dealership.
Right.
How do you get them to that point where they recognize that the service is just as important as the sale? Because if the person doesn't choose to renew or buy a car again in 5 years, you practically lost that first sale.
Well, I think it goes back to painting a picture again, telling a story of what happens if you don't have the service. So, like, do you need this warranty? I don't think so. Well, let me tell you a story of somebody who felt the same way that you did right now. And then 6 months later, something happened. And versus a story of someone who did get the warranty and how grateful and happy they are they have it.
Yeah.
So you have to paint that picture of what happens if you don't do what I'm suggesting versus what happens if you do what I'm suggesting. And what you're really selling is peace of mind.
True. Very true. All right. Awesome. Now, John, our listeners would have tapped into this episode and they would like to connect with you online. Where can they find you online?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, John Livesay. Also Instagram at The Pitch Whisperer. And my website is johnlivesay.com.
Thank you. All right. Before we wrap our episodes up, John, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote? If for any reason you get derailed or, something happens and you need to just use that quote to get refocused and just jump back on.
Yes. It's a quote from Arthur Ashe, the famous tennis pro. He said, "The key to success is confidence, and the key to confidence is preparation." So anytime I feel concerned about something or overwhelmed, I realize I have to think of myself like an athlete. And they practice before they get to the Olympics, and I need to make sure that I'm as prepared as possible for any new situation when it comes up.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, so we will have that quote in the show notes of this episode. Well, thank you so much, John, for hopping on to Navigating the Customer Experience, sharing all of these great insights as it relates to sales, customer service, some of the key things that you need to be a great storyteller, why it's important to create that picture, create that situation so you can change the perspective of the person that you're trying to sell to. And even in a customer service situation, as you said, create that feeling that they walk away feeling good. And they can't walk away feeling good if the narrative that you're selling is not one that's giving them that feeling. So, your message was definitely well heard by me. I hope the listeners will get a great value out of it as well.
Thanks so much for having me.
Just want to remind our listeners that you can follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX, and feel free to follow us on Facebook. Our private Facebook group is Navigating the Customer Experience Community. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience webinar will be hosted on Wednesday, July 26, 2023 at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This webinar will be provided with a complimentary copy of the ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience book. Who should attend? Customer service representatives, customer care officers, customer service associates, support agents, business development officers, customer care representatives, cashiers, receptionists, sales and service representatives, customer retention agents, client support specialists, customer engagement officers, client care coordinators, reservation specialists, reservations agents, collections officers, client relationship officers, administrators, account executives. If you deal with customers daily and you are seeking reinforcement of the skills needed to offer an exceptional experience, then this webinar is for you. This webinar will cover managing customer expectations. What are the 4 things customer expectations are based on? Customer service skills. What are the skills and competencies required to serve others? Handling irate and difficult customers. How to handle difficult and irate customers in a busy work environment. Your attitude, communication, finding solutions, and rapid response. Tools that you will need to help you exceed your customers' expectations. This webinar will help you ignite your customer service skills, navigate your emotions, and better understand how to serve customers during a time when the customer is even more demanding than before. Your business will see the exponential rewards when your team members are continually creating fantastic and memorable experiences for your customers. Please visit the register here on our podcast show notes page, and please feel free to hop on over to Instagram. You can visit our business page, Customer Service Global, that's CUSTOMERGLOBA, or you can visit Yannick W.A. Grant, that's YANIQUEWAGRANT. Both Instagram handles will have the link for you to register for this amazing webinar. We look forward to seeing you there. Please come and bring all your friends and colleagues.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.